Right, well, welcome everybody to this Women's Network event. And I feel mildly embarrassed that I'm not a woman, but I am introducing one hell of a woman and a very close friend, Janet Berridge, who was my predecessor and inspiration. That really is, I think, all I need to say by way of introduction. It took us 40 years to get a female chairman of the National Liberal Club. Nowadays, some people prefer to drop the man. Janet was always happy to be Madam Chairman, but that's a matter of personal style, and Janet has plenty of it. And I'd like her to, she has prepared something, unlike me, very sensibly. So Janet has got a marvellous presentation. I've had a little preview of it. You're in for a treat. You'll hear a little bit about the history of the club, some more recent, and take it away, Janet.
Thank you very much, Rupert, for that very kind introduction. I hope that this is going to now work. We've practiced it. Right, can you all see that? I hope so. Right, how I became the first woman chairman of the National Liberal Club. How did I become the first woman chairman of the National Liberal Club? Well, to put this all in perspective, we need to look at the club itself, its history, and what came before me. I was never head girl at my grammar school in the 1960s, nor did I shine academically, though I did receive a very good all-round education. And thanks to my father, I stood on my own feet at an early age when I went to Germany as an au pair at the age of 17. In the 70s, 80s and 90s, I had a number of very interesting jobs in Germany, mostly in the role of PA to senior management, where I learned about dealing with people on different levels and met one or two celebrities. In the 21st century, I became chairman of the Canterbury Constituency Party of the Liberal Democrats, which taught me a good deal about diplomacy, negotiation, compromise, and transparency, skills that I would need at the NLC in spades. This wonderful club, founded in 1882 and opened in 1887, was originally a gentleman's club. Clubs like this, some even older than the NLC, have been providing a space for men to meet, dine, and network since at least the 18th century. Anyone interested in the history of London clubs could do worse than acquire this excellent book, Club Government: How the Early Victorian World Was Ruled from London Clubs, by our very own Dr. Seth Tavo. Clubs in London, whether political or apolitical, were a men-only domain until at least the middle of the 20th century. Run by men, served by a largely male staff, and if not hostile to women, then simply not receptive to the idea that women might like to be members of such an institution. Joe Somerville, for many years membership secretary and then PA to our club secretary, Simon Roberts, reported that when she began work at No. 1 Whitehall Place as a junior clerk shortly after the war, she was required to take minutes of all male committee meetings from behind a screen, making it difficult to identify who was speaking. I can imagine. When I joined the NLC in early 2004, the General Committee comprised 40 members, only 4 of whom were women. Since there was no limit to how long anyone could serve on the committee, some of the members had served for many years, even decades. The attitude of the membership seemed to be, everything's fine, they know what they're doing. At that time, the club boasted 1,812 members, down from 2,000 in the year 2000. The NLC's female membership had grown only slowly after the club finally allowed women to become full members in 1976. Sadly, there are no official figures for the number of women members in those early days. Nevertheless, women were at least visible in the twice-yearly club news, albeit in black and white photographs. The reports from the General Purposes Committee and Wednesday Luncheon Circle attest to the fact that women were from time to time represented as speakers or as subjects of events. Initially, I used the club as a place to go in between commitments in London and occasionally attended one of the events. Living at that time in Canterbury, I would leave home after 9 a.m, spend the day in London, and often return on the last train to East Kent, arriving home after midnight. It was very convenient to retire to my club for an hour or two to rest between commitments, to meet other members, and then dine with friends or attend a club event. New members' dinners were a pleasant occasion, an opportunity to meet other members, but I sensed that there was an untapped potential for bringing people together in different contexts and forums to share experiences, discuss a topic of mutual interest, or enjoy a meal themed around a particular issue. There was already at that time a younger members group for the under 35s in the first decade of the century. But judging from the photos in club news, the membership was almost entirely male. In 2006, Valerie Williams, now a vice president of the club, wrote an extensive report in club news on women and the National Liberal Club. From it, we learned that in 1958, NLC membership for women was first raised, but rejected. In 1964, the president of the Liberal Party expressed support for admitting women as NLC members. In 1968, women were admitted as associate members, though they had to be married to an NLC male member, and they had restricted access to the club rooms. 34 women joined that year. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Women's Liberal Federation supported full membership. And in 1975, the Sex Discrimination Act paved the way for full membership. In 1976, women were finally granted full membership of the NLC, though the decision was made not by the membership or the committee, but by George de Chabry, aka the conman George Marks, the man who liked to boast that he had saved the NLC. In fact, he was doing his best to asset strip the club, but that's another story, told in detail by Brian Staley, NLC membership secretary in the 1970s, in his recently published book, My Road from Saigon. Concluding her report, Valerie Williams, who joined in 1997, stated, "I have never looked back. I regard my membership as an investment in my well-being. It brings me into contact with people I don't know and people I have come to know. It is both relaxing and stimulating, and I enjoy it." My own feelings echoed Valerie's sentiments, but I felt that if the club did not address a number of issues, we would be in deep trouble before long. This was all about the male-female balance, the aging membership, membership diversity, potential new members' special interests, communication between the committee and the membership, the updating of the club's facilities, a limit to the terms served on the committee, and expanding the network of reciprocal clubs around the world. From 1990 onwards, membership had steadily declined, and this trend continued from 2013 to 2015, with one exception, 2011, at a rate of about 100 members annually, despite valiant efforts in the early 21st century by the membership committee to recruit new members, including a £50 incentive voucher to any member introducing a new member, and associate membership for spouses and partners. In 2007, I was approached by two ladies from the General Committee who asked if I would consider standing for the committee. We need more female representation, they told me. I agreed and was duly elected to the committee and began to learn the ropes and work out how I might best make a meaningful contribution. In early 2008, the then chairman, Reverend Paul Hunt, published the George Report based on a survey of members. The first report to examine the state of the NLC since the 1980s, after the club had been saved from closure by Sir Lawrence and Lady Stina Robson, it shone light on a number of issues, including facilities, membership, and communications. Members had made such suggestions to update the website, improve the new members welcome pack, review how the committee communicates with the membership, and to enlist the service of members with expertise in one field or other to help with communication. The report's findings were clear. Members' understanding of how the club was run was not at all transparent. The structure put in place by the Robsons in the 1980s after the hasty exit of Mr. de Chabry, placing the day-to-day business of the club in the hands of the NLC Limited, was no longer fully fulfilling its intended function. By 2010, I had joined both the General Purposes Committee and the Membership Committee and had co-founded the Literary Circle. A year later, I had found 5 reciprocal clubs in Germany and set up the German Circle. By 2010, the makeup of the General Committee was more diversified, with 7 women and a number of younger members, reflecting more accurately the club's membership. In particular, I found that 2 colleagues, Rupert Morris and Seth Thévaux, shared some of my concerns about the long-term viability of the club. The new club chairman in 2010, Michael Burrell, was keen to move the club forward and update equipment, but was simultaneously aware that this would not be easy if membership declined further, reducing income from subscriptions. I remember well on several occasions asking Michael how things were progressing, and he would always give me the same reply. Janet, it's like trying to turn the Queen Mary round 180 degrees in mid-Atlantic. The dilemma in a nutshell was how to achieve meaningful progress to ensure the long-term viability of the NLC without robbing the club of its heritage, traditions, and values. Over a post-committee drink with Rupert and Seth, it transpired that we all agreed on one relatively uncontentious area that should be addressed sooner rather than later: the club magazine, then called Club News. A black, white and grey publication containing reports from committees, news from the past, and articles on current events, as well as information about the club and obituaries, it was simply out of place in a progressive club in 2012. We approached the General Committee and explained how we thought we could improve this publication and how it could be used as a marketing tool. The first new NLC magazine was produced in autumn 2012. Though the new look fall colour magazine did have a few detractors, the reaction was positive overall. And over the past 8 years, the twice-yearly publication has developed into a very attractive and effective window on NLC life. We felt that the club, described by one senior member of the General Committee as the best kept secret in London, needed to come out of hiding and market itself, albeit in a sensitive way that would take account of its history, its values, and its unique location. Many other clubs in London, located in St James, Pall Mall and Piccadilly, cannot boast a wonderful terrace overlooking the River Thames, but we were not making the most of that asset. I felt sure that we could achieve change harmoniously through consensus in cooperation with others. Slowly, a unified group of people from all ages, backgrounds and professions would come together and find a way to transform the NLC into a modern, inclusive club with a fine tradition. That informal three-way chat over a drink led to the emergence of a larger group of committee members supportive of gentle change who were happy to provide input and ideas. Above all, there was agreement that we needed more transparency and to involve the staff, some of whom had been serving the club for many years. In 2012 or 2013, I don't recall, two senior male members of the General Committee approached me and asked if I would consider putting my name forward as Vice Chairman in May 2013. I gather it was seen as appropriate that 40 years after the club had admitted women, we should have a woman chairman. In May 2013, Michael Pickersgill was elected Chairman of the club and I Vice Chairman. It was my aim to work in close harmony with Michael to support him in his work as chairman. At the same time, I was keen to make suggestions for improving members' understanding of the club structure. The structure of the NLC was very complicated, as can be seen from an organigram drawn up by Seth Tavo at the time. The chairmanship of NLC Limited alternated between the club and the company. The majority shareholder in the company was the Robson Charitable Trust, run by the three children of Sir Lawrence and Lady Robson. Of these three, only their son, the Honourable Morris, was active in NLC Limited, having taken over from his mother on her death in 1999. The Joint Management Committee, which was set up by Sir Lawrence as a bridge between the club and the committee, and the company, I beg your pardon, reported the company's financial position at general committee meetings. But the figures presented were not transparent, and there was growing disquiet in view of the declining membership that the club was becoming unstable. I believed that securing the long-term viability of the club required input from people who wished to see the club prosper well into the future and who had professional expertise. By talking to committee members supportive of change, a set of priorities emerged that needed to be addressed. I tried my best between 2013 and 2016 to champion some of these priorities, such as staff appraisals, checks and balances, proper overview and scrutiny of accounting procedures, and more interaction between the General Committee and the staff. But much of this was difficult to achieve due to the dual-track structure. As Vice Chairman from May 2013 to May 2016, I attended board meetings of NLC Limited, along with... Okay. As Vice Chairman from May 2013 to May 2016, I attended board meetings of NLC Limited along with the Chairman. I'm no high-flying businesswoman, but even I was aware that there was too little scrutiny or oversight in the way the company was run. We regularly looked at weekly trading figures, the balance sheet, and comparisons with previous years, and discussed the budget for the forthcoming accounting year, but we rarely addressed any pressing issues that would have improved the club's facilities or the way it was run, and the disconnect between the club and the company was very obvious. I was the first woman to serve on the board since Stina Robson, and my input was clearly not always welcome, or even in some cases, not even minuted. I wasn't taken seriously. I rather think the two senior members who recommended me for the post of chairman had had a female figurehead in mind who would simply carry on leading the club as it had always been, adding a feminine touch here and there. Once the scale of the task had been revealed, it was clear to me that that was simply not an option. I was determined to prepare the way for a chairmanship that would make a difference, one that would make the club viable long into the future. I wanted the club to be much more inclusive, not just towards female members, but to people of all backgrounds. We needed to make it clear that any form of discrimination on grounds of gender, religion, ethnicity, or political views would not be tolerated. I wanted the National Liberal Club to live up to its name. One bone of contention which needed addressing was the hotel next door, whose predecessor had bought the NLC's bedrooms in 1978 and was frequently encroaching on our space and was very tardy in reacting to water damage and renovations within the club that were their responsibility. The hotel's marketing literature even referred to number 1 Whitehall Place as the former National Liberal Club. In fact, the Crown lease states that unless a private members club is run on the premises, the hotel's legal status has no basis. As early as 2012, Michael Burrell had confidentially mentioned to a number of colleagues on the General Committee his concerns about Morris's state of health, since his behaviour was sometimes somewhat erratic. Rupert, whose day job includes being a humanist celebrant, was asked in 2015 to conduct the marriage ceremony of one of the Robsons' granddaughters, where he became acquainted with Morris's sisters, Christina and Vanessa. I, in turn, discreetly made contact with Vanessa myself, and together Rupert and I cautiously and sensitively began building bridges to the sisters. We both felt sure that they might one day be supportive if called upon to take over from their brother, and that they would wish no more than to fulfill their parents' legacy. By 2016, when I was about to step up to become chairman, I wrote for my own benefit a short review of things that had been achieved during my years as vice chairman, though not, of course, all by me alone. They included setting up a communications committee and redesigning club literature, updating the magazine and website, welcoming back the Authors Club to its original home, establishing Twitter and Facebook profiles for the club, participating in the Open House initiative, helping to launch the NLC party, the best in town, making the case for Wi-Fi across the club, updating the club rules to reflect changing times, talking to the manager of the Horse Guards Hotel about our shared spaces, encouraging the creation of many more circles, and supporting the setting up of the Commonwealth and European forums. My colleagues and I felt it was important to ask the membership what they thought. So in 2016, with the committee's blessing, a members' survey was sent out asking members what they thought about specific aspects of the club and the rules. The returns were phenomenally good, much better than any commercial survey, and the data collected proved to be invaluable for deciding the way forward. Rupert joined the board as vice chairman in May 2016, and together we encouraged colleagues on the committees to support our efforts to implement reforms that would strengthen the club. The changes I helped to implement did not lead to blood on the carpet, but I will not conceal that there were some heated exchanges, in part, no doubt, due to wounded pride because some people felt their achievements were being dismissed or placed in a negative light. Not everyone was happy with my approach, which is regrettable, since I believe I went to considerable lengths not to criticize anyone personally for perceived mistakes of the past. Nevertheless, there was some talk of a downward spiral, the end of an era, secrecy, duplicity, and self-seeking agendas, and the eventual demise of the club under my chairmanship. From time to time, I was verbally attacked in committee meetings for my approach and criticised for the way I was championing change. But most of my colleagues on the General Committee were more than supportive and defended me, for which I am very grateful. In the wider context, I was humbled and delighted to find so much support from members, not just from other women, but from across the entire membership. This was a huge change for a former gentleman's club, and it was perhaps inevitable that I was initially patronised and belittled. My whole intention as chairman from 2016 onwards was to state what was staring us all in the face. The club was not well run. What could we do to redress this situation and make sure that our beloved club flourished and remained viable for many years to come? There was, however, no point in looking back, conducting post-mortems or apportioning blame. The situation had grown organically, out of circumstance over many years, and it was crucial that we implement the right measures as soon as possible to avert further decline. Another idea mooted as early as 2014 was an away day for committee members and staff in order for the representatives of the membership to connect with people who work for the club. There was a mixed reaction to the idea, ranging from open hostility through suspicion to cautiously welcoming such a move. For a while, it seemed the idea would be kicked into the long grass, but in early 2017, we finally held our first away day for staff and general committee members. It was an inspirational, transformative day of brainstorming and group tasks, which jumbled up front of house, kitchen and office staff with a good turnout of committee members. The ideas and conversations that came out of it were most revealing, further evidence of the disconnect between the day-to-day commercial operation and the aims and aspirations of the club's membership. I feel it set the tone of my chairmanship at an early stage by showing that positive change was on the way, and indeed one committee member confided to me that after years of dreary, tedious, pointless meetings, they found it the most worthwhile thing that they had attended while on general committee. In July 2017, Maurice Robson resigned on health grounds and handed over to his sisters. As we had predicted, Christina and Vanessa were hugely supportive of the direction the club was taking. Together with the Reverend Paul Hunt, they shouldered much of the responsibility of the changeover from the old company structure to a new board with highly qualified members able to scrutinise the company's business activities. Another medium to long-term aim was to ensure that the club could eventually run itself, thereby releasing the Robson Charitable Trust from its long-term commitment. The idea of the club buying back the shares owned by the RCT had been mooted as far back as 2014. Phil Reeves, our honorary treasurer, has put in a great deal of work over the years assessing the viability of this model, essentially merging the limited company and the club to form one entity, as reflected in the new organigram presented at the 2020 away day. As you will know, my successors, along with NLC's enhanced board, have, thanks to careful negotiation, almost achieved this goal. During my chairmanship, I endeavoured to engage with as many people, members and guests as possible. I tried hard to remember people's names, faces and biographical details. I made a point of getting to know the staff better and showing my appreciation for all they do. I introduced new events such as International Women's Day and encouraged women's groups to visit the club. I was a strong supporter of the membership committee's efforts to designate honorary members, and I'm very proud to have been able to present NLC badges to Gina Miller and Professor Martha Nussbaum. I'm also immensely proud to have represented the NLC on 2 trips by the Commonwealth Forum to Malta and Gibraltar, which were hugely successful and were followed by further trips to Cyprus and India. I am often asked why I did not serve out my full 3-year term as chairman. That's based on a misunderstanding, since the chairman and vice chairman are elected 1 year at a time for a maximum of 3 years. I was not the first chairman to serve for less than 3 years. His Honour Judge Baker served only 1 year, from May 2006 to May 2007, due to personal circumstances. In my case, a number of factors came together. It was clear by May 2018 that the new NLC Limited board would be in place, and I did not intend to serve on that body, since there were so many people eminently more qualified than me. Having spent 5 years, 3 as vice chairman, 2 as chairman, in a very intense transition situation, I was beginning to feel the physical and emotional strain, not helped in 2014, 2015, 16 and 17 by the death of several very close friends, including the man who proposed me for NLC membership back in 2004, Richard Graham, whom you see on the left. In all that time, being a freelance translator, I had had to rely on my husband, Michael, to take on the bulk of our often demanding workload, a burden he had gladly accepted, but one which I did not wish him to have to carry any longer. Finally, due to the decision by the UK government to leave the European Union following the referendum of 2016, Michael and I were clear where our destiny lay: in Europe. Specifically in Berlin, where we had had a second home since 2005. In late 2017, we found, quite by chance, a house which fulfilled all our requirements and was simply too good to miss. All of this prompted me in December 27 to ask Rupert if he thought he was ready and able to step up to the chair. His response, having been at my side for much of those 5 years, assisting and encouraging me, was a resounding yes. Since then, the club has gone from strength to strength, with a more diverse membership, younger members, a host of exciting and attractive events, and a well-functioning management structure. Long may it last. In conclusion, how I became the first woman chairman of the NLC is basically a concatenation of circumstances and events. This honour could easily have gone to Valerie Williams, or Angela Stile, Ella Slack, or Veronica Harrington. But I understand from an insider that various women were approached and decided not to put their names forward. From my point of view, it was perhaps a case of being in the right place at the right time. I am delighted that, perhaps encouraged by my example, other women have come forward to lead circles and forums in the club and to be part of the active body of members who make the NLC what it has become today. The figures speak for themselves. I am proud to have held the title of chairman for 2 years and steered the club through a difficult period in its history. And I'm equally proud as an officer of the club to have remained supportive behind the scenes, offering advice or an opinion when it was asked for, and of giving my wholehearted support to Chairman Rupert Morris and his Vice Chairman Tim McNally. I have no doubt that I was not a one-off. In fact, I suspect that before long, there will be another female chairman of the National Liberal Club, and that will be very welcome. It's difficult to pick out individuals who deserve a mention in a talk like this, but I would be remiss if I did not thank not only Rupert, Seth, Tim and Phil, but also James Brown, Peter Cargin, Lord David Chidgey, Robert Hammond, Michael Meadowcroft, Elizabeth Negus, Karin Rehatzek, Jamie Sharpley, Angela Stile, Trevor Peel and Charles Welshman for their loyalty and support. I must stress, however, that this transition was most definitely a team effort, and I'm grateful to all my committee members and colleagues and many more people besides, too numerous to mention here. I must also mention the quiet but constant support I received from our President, Lord Alan Beath, and his late wife, Baroness Diana Maddock. And of course, I am indebted to Christina Bing and Vanessa Potter for coming forward when they did, and for all that they have done to see the NLC prosper, hopefully far into the future, thereby fulfilling their parents' legacy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, Janet, thank you so much. That was absolutely terrific. Thank you for all the work you put in putting that together. Our first question is from Val.
Hi, Janet. That was a tour de force. Like you, I came from a girls' grammar school. I went to a girls' grammar school. I never made head girl either. So I was just wondering, given the history of the original history of the club as a gentleman's club, what you found when you became the chairman of the club, what was the biggest challenge and the biggest achievement? I mean, you've talked about a lot of them, but if you just think...
Well, I think the biggest challenge was actually achieving what we did. And as I say, in a way, it was a very female achievement, because my rapport with the sisters was, I think, although Rupert made contact with them as well, but it was key to proving that this could be done. And the biggest challenge, if you like, initially was convincing people that something had to be done, that you can't have a club that was founded in the 19th century and whose methods were sort of, if you like, stuck in the 20th century, that was already in the 21st century, because there was a problem of not sort of being in step with things. Things just didn't work as they should. But a lot of people seem to think that if you suddenly became modern, then you would change the club. And I tried very hard to make people see that that would not happen. I don't think that the essence, the quintessence of the club has been altered to a very great extent, but we have modernized, and that was absolutely essential. So yeah, I mean, as you say, there are lots of achievements, but as I say, they weren't all thanks to me. I'm just very glad to have been if you like, the figurehead at the head of all that, and it was a huge honor and privilege.
And thanks, Janet. Next question is from Elizabeth. Please.
Janet, what can I say? Such a highly inspirational talk that cuts across cultural, social, and historical aspects. I'm really, really delighted to be here listening to you. I know you talked about the challenges you faced as a woman. Sadly, many women will say that they still face it. Two questions. One, precisely how did you overcome those challenges? Because you're one woman going in one direction, and yes, you had support from people, but it's still a man's forum. So number one, how did you literally overcome those challenges? And secondly, what advice would you give to women wanting to climb that ladder in a male-dominated world? Thank you.
I suppose it has something to do with character, and my father, I'm one of two siblings. I have a younger brother, but my father never ever gave me the impression that because I was a girl, I couldn't achieve something. And I suppose I've always been fairly clear about my abilities. I've also known my limitations. But I was clear when I decided that I would take this challenge on. I felt sure that I could do it, but I'm sure it would have been far, far more difficult if I hadn't had the support of all those wonderful people on the committee who saw things as I did, and helped me along the way. But at the end of the day, it is really about, yeah, just keeping your strength together and saying, and being absolutely sure of the way forward that you wish to take. And as I say, it was rather like a gramophone record going round and round and round. And I thought, this isn't right. It's got stuck in the groove. We have to jog the needle and get it to move on, and it did. But that's just the way I saw it. So I was very lucky. And as far as young women are concerned, I think a lot of young women these days are aware of what they can do. And I admire a lot of younger women who seem to be even more self-assured than I am. So I think they should all be encouraged.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next question is from Kate Birch.
Hello, Janet. You know, because of you, I'm on the general committee, so people have that to blame you for. And of course, I followed you into the literary circle, which is celebrating 10 years next April, from what I've seen. Did you find unexpected allies? And then did you find unexpected resistance? You see what I mean?
Yes. Yes, I did. Yeah, definitely. There were some people who I thought would be more supportive, and then, but they had a different approach, or maybe they were too cautious. They thought, oh, this is all going too fast. But sometimes events, you know, sort of overtook planning, or if, you know, you can't always plan for these things. This is, as I say, just through talking to various people, these priorities sort of crystallized out of what we wanted to do. But you couldn't actually sort of say, this is a list of priorities and that's the first thing we've got to achieve. Sometimes it was a case of just juggling and saying, well, these are general things that we want to achieve in due course. And then something would happen and that would push one priority up the list and something else down, and that sort of thing. But yes, I was really heartened by so many members in the club who came up to me at events and said, you've changed the club for the better. And I like to think that that was because of the feminine aspect. I did try to take people with me and to make it more of a I don't know, to make the social aspect as important as anything else, and to give them the feeling that they mattered. I think I'm trying to not to criticize anybody's approach beforehand, but I think there was a tendency towards a gentleman's club being a bit complacent, you know. Men would, I can remember when I first joined, seeing one or two gentlemen asleep in the chair in the afternoon after a very good lunch and several glasses of wine, and thinking, well, yes, that's one way of using the club. But to me, I wanted more out of my club use, my club membership. And I think that resonated with a lot of people. So yes, I think I was very determined to sort of kick the complacency out.
Great, thank you, Janet. Next question is from Trevor Peel.
Thank you, Rupert.
Hello, Trevor.
Hello, Janet in Berlin. I'm here all the way from sunny Seaton, Carew. Janet, that was a fantastic overview, and thank you very much. You described a fascinating period in our history. Mm-hmm. The last few years have been significant in terms of the development of the club, but it's an evolutionary approach. And obviously you took it through to a huge extent and made major developments. Rupert and Tim are doing the same at the moment. COVID-19 has come and made significant problems for everybody in society, including the club. Where do you think, Janet, the club will be in 10 years' time? And can I ask you to concentrate on governance? Because I actually agreed with you totally, as you know I have done all along, that the club was far too complicated, far too overstructured. I'd just like your views about where you think we'll be in 10 years' time.
Oh, well, I have to say, Trevor, that you're one of the people who has contributed to making the club so much more vibrant and interesting and offering so much more. Where the club will be in 10 years' time, in 2030, my goodness. Well, I hope it will be run along much slimmer lines. I mean, you saw the difference between the organogram in 2016, which I remember when it was handed out at the meeting, and everybody sort of looked at it aghast and said, I can't make sense of that. And the one that we now have 4 years later does make it all look a lot more streamlined. But I would imagine that I mean, the whole thing is still a process, an ongoing process. I would hope that in 10 years' time, there will be all sorts of improvements. I mean, we're still learning how we can streamline a lot of the things that happen. If you remember, for many years, the bookings process was terribly complicated and old-fashioned, and now most booking takes place online, and that's much better for everybody concerned. And I'm sure that will those sort of things will make a big difference. But I mean, who knows? None of us can predict what's going to happen with COVID, how long it's going to last, and what difference it will make to our lives. I mean, as in London, here in Berlin, we have this wonderful little bubble called the International Club, and we can still go there and socialize, socially distanced. But that's, as I say, it's like a bubble. And if this virus is with us for a very long time, we'll have to hope that it won't impinge too much on the commercial side of the club, because that would be very detrimental. So you're asking the impossible, really, Trevor. But as I say, I feel sure, I feel confident that we've got everything in place for the club to go forward and be more than viable in the next 10 years. My waiter has just brought me a very nice glass of wine. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Our next question in this room comes from Semra, and if anybody else has any questions, and then Sam, Semra.
Hi, Janet. Thank you very much for the lovely presentation. Hello to Berlin. I would like to raise the question I keep raising quite often in the club, especially at our Tuesday table. When I became a member of this club, I've been through all the circles, and now I'm active in some of the circles. What I have missed, coming from a feminist movement, feminist background, women's circle only for women. And I know we have already spoken between members. It is a bit not possible, as we are trying to debate, because there is a club only for gentlemen, and this club was only for gentlemen, and we try to actually mix. But I think, as thinking from a feminist point of view, having a woman-only group, we don't need to justify that women's circle should be only for women. So I would like to actually have your point of view, being the ex-chair of this club. What would you think, or why did anybody come up with that idea, having just a circle, even small circle, only for women members?
I think actually the original idea behind the Tuesday table was for women. And then it just sort of suddenly got bigger and bigger, and somebody said to a gentleman who was standing on the side, oh, well, you can join in too. And as we know, it's now become the Tuesday and Thursday table, which is astounding. Now, I don't see any problem with women getting together, and you can call it what you want. You don't necessarily have to call it a women's circle. The only thing is, don't forget that, you know, we fought so hard to become members of the National Liberal Club, which had been a gentleman's club. And from time to time, we hear about the few clubs still in London that are male only. And there is a feeling, I suppose it's all about inclusion. But that doesn't mean to say that if women want to have their own get together around a particular topic, that they shouldn't do that. But it is difficult because you often unwittingly then find yourself excluding someone. But I would have thought that you could have a women's circle that would look at issues that are specific to women, and I don't know, ask some of our colleagues how they would feel about that.
I'm still doing my research.
All right,
Thanks.
next question from Sam Mahmood.
Hello, Sam.
Hi, Jane. Janet, sorry, that was a really inspiring talk. I hadn't appreciated how much work and thinking and perseverance had gone into your chairmanship, and I think we're all very grateful to you for bringing the club to where it is today. I just had two questions. So one was, you mentioned that the two gentlemen who approached you, to consider standing as chairman, perhaps were expecting more of a figurehead. What sort of response did you get? I mean, there was resistance, you talked about that, but was there an attempt to, was there a regret on their part that perhaps they had picked the wrong woman, because this was someone who was actually going to, God forbid, had a mind of her own, and was going to use it and was going to put thought into action, and if there was alienation there, was there difficulty in deciding how to build trust, whom to trust, whom not to trust? I thought Kate had a very good question when she asked you about support from unexpected sources and the lack of from unexpected sources. That can sometimes put you off track.
Yes, I think that I do think that the two senior members who approached me probably thought that being chairman was simply being a figurehead, and they didn't expect quite so much proactive activity from me. But as I say, when I looked at behind the scenes, as it were, I was concerned that the club might not be in such good shape. I mean, something I didn't even touch on because it's rather skews the whole perspective. But in 2008, of course, there was the financial crash. Now, I can remember talking about what effect that might have on membership. And we were never quite sure whether it was people who said, I've lost my job, I can't afford membership any longer, or whether it was people just getting disenchanted with the club because it wasn't offering what they wanted. But the two members who made the suggestion to me and who supported me in that, I think, as I say, I think they just thought I would be a figurehead and would just sort of, I would take my lead from what had gone before. But it was clear to Rupert and me at an early stage that something had to change. And we tried to talk to them about it, but we didn't get very far because there just wasn't really, I don't know, they just sort of didn't see it our way, as it were. But yes, I'm very, very grateful for all the people. But by then, a lot of new people were on the committee, and that was what made the big difference. The committee, when I joined the club, had been very much the same people being elected over and over again, as I say, without any restriction on how long they could sit on the committee. And we now have a different system in place, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, it's like anything, you occasionally need to refresh a committee. You don't want people who've been there for 20 or 30 years still, you know, saying, yes, I vote for that, I vote for that. You need people to bring in new ideas, people like Trevor and Karin and all sorts of people. So I don't want to make a big thing of it. I know that some people think I was very badly treated, but you know, it was hard knocks, but I survived it. And thank goodness. And as I say, the club's in a better place with Rupert and Tim.
Again, I think, having seen you with a glass of wine a few minutes ago, one or two of us are thinking about those lines. But if there is anybody here who's suddenly thought of something that they want to ask, or any latecomers, no? Well, I think on that, I just want to sum up by saying that you know, you and I were very much a team from the beginning.
Absolutely.
You became chairman, and you know, I'm working in very much the same way with Tim. It can be a sort of lonely job of being chairman. You suddenly think, oh God, people are looking at me, and I've got to do something, and I don't know what to do. And I get that feeling, and you've had that feeling. But
Yeah.
we had her, and I got Tim. And I think we did establish that sort of bond of mutual support, which is terribly important. I learned a fantastic amount from you, and I think the thing I learned most of all was about looking after people. I never ceased to be amazed at how marvellous you were at cruising the tables at dinner, saying hello to new people, always doing that, and with the staff. And taking all the trouble with staff to write individual Christmas cards to every member of staff, which is something I immediately, as soon as I knew you'd done that, I thought, I've got to do that. I've got to do that. It's important, you know, and as soon as I do it, I knew I couldn't do anything else. Absolutely the right thing to do. And so you've taught me a huge amount. I don't think it'll be another 40 years before our next female chair. I'm absolutely certain it won't be long. You know, we still have frustrations. We had, you know, the latest round of general committee elections. I regret to say that only 2 of the 2 of the 13 members elected in general committee are women. And there was a peculiar circumstance in that there were a lot of political people, a lot of political jobs came up, so 2 women in particular who scored more votes than some of the political members have been elected. So that's, unfortunately, that's part of the rules of the club, and I hope more women will become political members and give themselves a better chance of being elected. But thank goodness, you know, we do have Elizabeth there, who's chair of general purposes, and Elizabeth here, who's now chairing a diversity group, and lots of other women around this table are making their presence felt in many different ways. And Val has been extraordinarily gracious in allowing me to, you know, chair this evening. So I do think we are making progress, but we can't take it for granted. The chaps have had it their way for far too long, and thank goodness you came along and made the breakthrough. Elizabeth, you wanted to make a quick point.
Yes, I just want to thank Janet, because a few years ago, going back to our trip in Malta, it was Janet who encouraged me, of course, with Trevor, to become a member of the club in terms of diversity. So I could see her in how instrumental she was in expanding the club in terms of diversity, younger members, etc. So Janet, while you're here, I would like to extend a great big thank you, because it has helped me to, well, it has opened doors for me to be proactive in other groups, for focus groups. So thank you very much. And I'm sending virtual hugs and kisses to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And a final call out to Tuesday table. I'm sorry Karin isn't here on the call today.
She'll be here tomorrow.
She'll be here tomorrow. Tuesday and now Thursday table, but Val's doing a fantastic job. I know that Tuesday table got some inspiration from you And, you know, I think the club is a so much better place for having had you as its first woman chairman. So thank you very much, Janet. And now we can all.
Thank you very much.